Hello and welcome to Our Promise Live. I'm Kyla Aquino Irving. We're talking with Our Promise's Senior Director Tabitha Angel. Hi, Tabitha.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So I'm excited. We're going to learn all about how the Our Promise program works, how nonprofits get paid, and what exactly are the fees that are applied. So Tabitha, I know that the Our Promise program has evolved quite a bit since it started way back in 1957. I'd be
Yeah.
shocked if it didn't. So please tell us a little bit about how the Our Promise works today.
Sure. So yeah, we've been around since 1957. It's been written into state government or state statutes since then, and it's evolved definitely. So in the olden days, the state used to contract with multiple United Ways up and down the state to help run the state campaign. So they each would have their own individual contracts. Well, I would say roughly, about 8 years ago, 10 years ago, they said, hey, well, the Capital Region, United Way, California, all of our state headquarters are headquartered here in the capital, Sacramento. We were producing all of the materials, doing all of the marketing, doing all of the distribution. They were like, okay, well, I think, United Way, California, Capital Region should be the operator. And then we still subcontract with all of the other United Ways up and down the state to help us with those state regional offices. So of course, there's the DMVs in LA, San Diego, all the way up to the Oregon border and down into the desert. So, we still work with all those other United Ways to help operate the campaign and process the campaign. But here at United Way California Capital Region, we're the main vendor and we're the one who are the processor and the operator and do all of the marketing materials for the Our Promise campaign.
And it's a lot. There's almost 300,000 California state employees.
Yeah. And then with that being said, we also certify all of the nonprofits that apply to be part of our campaign. So every year we open up nonprofit certification, and that is really for nonprofits to apply to be on our list or in our booklet. And that really allows, hundreds and thousands of nonprofits to be on that list and be in front of 300,000 state employees to kind of get their name out there. And with that being, and that number kind of fluctuates every year. So some nonprofits are very aware of our campaign and know that it's, great and a great opportunity for them to get in front of all of these state employees. And then of course, there's some nonprofits are like, oh, I didn't know that we could do that and be a part of your list and apply. It's free application. So there's nothing, you're not paying for anything. We just make sure that you are vetted through the Department of Justice, that you're vetted by the IRS, you're in good standing. So we do all of that behind the scenes of certification for the state of California to make sure that everyone is good on our list. And this year we have roughly about 1,800 nonprofits that are on that list.
Right. And just to tease it out, tune in November 2nd, same time at noon, right here. Benjamin Aceto, our manager at the Our Promise program, will be talking more in detail about that nonprofit certification. So you don't want to miss that.
Yeah, and how that works. It's a really good opportunity. So I hope nonprofits, we encourage every nonprofit to apply. There's no reason not to. It's free, it's application, and get your name in front of hundreds and thousands of state employees, which is fantastic. The great thing about our campaign is that you can literally give to any 501c3 nonprofit. So it doesn't matter who it is, as long as they have a tax ID. State employees can give their monthly donation to that nonprofit. And it doesn't just have to be one nonprofit, they can give to multiple nonprofits every month, which is fantastic.
Yeah, so let's talk about the e-pledge process. That used to be reams and reams of papers and giant boxes that would arrive at our doorstep.
Yeah, so a major part of the process of what we used to do was that we would pre-print 300,000 pieces of pledge forms. So we would have to print a pledge form for every single state employee. And we used to do that process. We would work with the state controller's office, who is one of the state departments, and to help pre-print a form for every single state employee with their name on it, the department they were in, etc. And that would it's almost like a triplicate. So with the fun little pieces of paper on the edges, and those would all get delivered to our office, our main office here. And then they weren't separated by department. So our staff, our mini staff of 3, would have to separate those out by department. So there's roughly 200 plus state departments. So we would have to rip them each by individual by department, and then we would distribute them to the headquarters, and then they would distribute them out to their regional offices and to every single state employee. So it was quite a process, logistical kind of process as well. The logistics behind that, trying to get that in front of every single state employee, was huge. And then having to collect all of that. And then last year with the pandemic, we couldn't distribute because people were telecommuting, working from home, etc. Right. So we don't have access to that personal information to send a form out to every single state employee's home address. So we were able to go online, which we'd been begging the state for, quite a few years to do, because it was such a process. And so we were able to do that with the help of a couple different state departments, Department of Technology, Department of General Services, and the State Controller's Office. We were able to go online, and it's been such a great platform because it's very safe. It's very secure. Right. It's only through their individual profile, and also just the accessibility of it to be able to go online at any time you would like. So, we also had shift work, work as well that would happen with different state employees. For example, CH Highway Patrol and correctional officers, they don't work an 8 to 5.
Right.
It's not like they were getting that paper form, they might be getting it at midnight or at 6 p.m. when they get off. So this allowed, anybody to be able to go on at any time to make their pledge or make their donation. I tell people now, well, maybe you're a morning person. You love to wake up at 4:30, 5 o'clock and have your cup of coffee and maybe go online and check some stuff out. Or maybe you're a night owl and you come home and digest, and maybe you want to make your donation at night and you've thought about it during the day. So this really allows accessibility for everyone at any time during the day to make their donation.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, didn't the forms used to have people's social security numbers on them?
So they didn't have them pre-printed on them, but if you wanted to make a donation through your payroll deduction, yes, you would have to, that was one of the sections you would have to complete, and you would have to completely use your social security number, because that was the only thing that tied state employees to their paycheck was their social, that was their identifier.
Right.
So yeah, that was difficult to, go out and fundraise and convince people hey, I need your full social security number in order to make your donation. It wasn't my preference necessarily, but that was something that the state needed in order to make those donations, those deductions happen. And so with the e-pledge, we no longer have that. Exactly. We don't have to ask them for that, and that's a big piece of your identity to be floating around on a piece of paper. And granted, we've never had a breach of information. We're very safe and secure in the way that we collect that information, keep that information, et cetera. That is part of our due diligence and part of our contract with the state of California. But it's a little easier to ask people to be able to go online and do a very secure online platform than them writing it on a piece of paper and turning it in.
Because it goes right through their Cal Employee Connect account, correct?
Yes, so that's their individual profile that they're able to view their pay warrant every month or every day or every hour. It's before they used to get this big paycheck that was tri-folded out and has all of their deductions on it. It's quite a big paycheck that they would be printed. And now, because they all went telecommute last year, the state controller's office decided to build a different platform for them because they weren't able to get paper paychecks out to people.
Right.
So, they created this platform, Cal Employee Connect, to allow folks to be able to look at all of their deductions, their medical, their dental, their retirement, all of that. So that is where the Our Promise e-pledge lives during the campaign season from September 1st to November 12th.
Got it. So let's talk about how nonprofits get paid.
Sure. So, nonprofits get, and that's a big piece behind the scenes that people don't realize that we do, is that, we're paying out thousands of nonprofits. State employees, they have that choice to give to any nonprofit. So that really, that flexibility and being able to really donate to whomever they like, that means we're paying out all of those designations.
Right.
It's a huge part of what we do, the accounting piece. And so we either pay based upon how nonprofits are signed up to be paid, meaning they can sign up EFT, which is, direct deposit. So if they're signed up that way, we just directly deposit that payment into their account on a monthly basis. If they are not signed up EFT, then, that's a bigger process for us on the back end in-house as far as cutting a check, mailing it, pushing it out. So they're paid out on a quarterly basis if they're not signed up for EFT. So we're encouraging it more and more for folks to be signed up EFT, and we get requests every day for I think, nonprofits are definitely moving from the old school of getting a paper check in the mail, and they're all realizing like, hey, this is really easy. We can get paid direct deposit. This is fantastic. So we've seen a huge shift in that, as well as nonprofits more are signing up for EFT.
I mean, it makes sense, especially if so many people don't even have employees in their offices to physically take the checks and, turn them into the bank. So that makes sense.
So all those pledges that are being made right now, even though they're being pledged in 2021, those payments aren't going into effect until 2022. So those deductions, like if they're doing a payroll deduction, that would go into effect on their December 31st pay warrant. And then that nonprofit would start being paid out in January 2022 onward. So that's when those pledges are being paid out.
Got it.
Yeah, it's but huge behind the scenes. We don't get into all of that necessarily when we're out there fundraising, but it's a great piece to just know how we work as an organization, and that the state relies on us to do all of those behind the scenes efforts.
That's right. So I want to get right into the fees involved. What are the fees involved with the Our Promise program?
Yeah, so would love to talk about that, because a lot of people say, well, how much of my donation is going, to the nonprofit? And I think there is, I'm glad we're going to do this myth versus fact today, because there is this, I think, assumption of that, there is no overhead for nonprofits, and that, at the end of the day, nonprofits are a business. I think people, have this assumption maybe, or presumption that they're just doing free work, and why they're doing a lot of work, and they're probably doing it at less cost than most organizations or most businesses. It's not free. They have to be able to run an organization and run these programs and resources at somewhat of a cost. It may not be as much of a cost as other corporations or things like that. So we do have an overhead as an organization. Our overhead is 13.5%, which is pretty average. If you look at like Better Business Bureau of what nonprofits are, it's pretty middle of the road overhead. And, that's really for us to do what we just talked about, all of the different behind the scenes that we are doing. And that's paying out the thousands of nonprofits. That's the certification, and that's the distribution and running the campaign and all the marketing materials. State of California is big, right? We're, the largest state in the United States. And so we need a lot of state employees to help us run, this wonderful state that we live in. And there's 300,000 state employees that help make that are public servants. And
Right.
so for us to run that campaign, we are the largest state charitable campaign, and we raise a lot of funds for these nonprofits. But in order for all those nonprofits to be paid out and, doing our due diligence and making sure that it's valid and that we're not just paying anyone. We're not just, paying, somebody who decided to run a nonprofit all of a sudden. We're making sure that they are valid,
Exactly.
by the state government and the federal government, to make sure that they are really a valid organization that we are paying out. So that is part of our overhead, is making sure all of those things are happening. And then also I talked about subcontracting with those other United Ways.
Right.
I like to say I'm here headquartered in Sacramento, and why I would love to be fundraising in sunny San Diego, or even I would love to fundraise up there in Wairika near the Oregon border and check out our other beautiful parts of California. I'm not able to, right? So I have to stay here and oversee some things. So we really rely on those other United Ways to help us run the state campaign in those regions. So they are also, part of our overhead. They are getting paid out to help us fundraise in those areas.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to get into some of these myths and we'll clear them up today. Here we go. So the first one, let's see. Go right back. So we talked about our fees specifically. This is kind of the breakdown.
So this is a great visual to showcase. So people say, well, what's going to the nonprofit? And it shows right here that 85.5% is going directly to your nonprofit. 8% of that is for campaign costs. So that's all the behind the scenes of what we're doing, from the marketing to the accounting, to the fundraising, to the nonprofit certification. And then the 5.5% goes to that local campaign support, to those local United Ways who are helping us run the state campaign all throughout the different regions.
Got it.
Which is fantastic.
So the first myth we've got is nonprofits can function without overhead. And I think you definitely touched upon this.
Yeah, and that's kind of saying like, well, nonprofits just can run for free. Like they can just operate at no cost. And you've said it right here that, every business has an expenses, including nonprofits.
That's right.
And it varies. It really does vary for each nonprofit and the services they are providing. You can see on Our Promise, we run at a 13.5% overhead. Shriners Hospital, runs at a 15% overhead, but you also have to think, what is each organization or each nonprofit providing that probably really directly correlates with their overhead. For example, Shriners is a hospital providing medical expenses. So their overhead will be always a little higher because they are literally providing free medical care for children, whether that's a prosthetic leg, prosthetic arm. They're the top burn unit in the nation as far as, providing burn care for children. So, and nobody ever questions nonprofits. Like they don't think like, because they look at the positive, right? Of like, oh, they are providing all these amazing resources and programs, and nobody's questioning necessarily the overhead. And I think us being contracted out by the state and us being a vendor essentially, or a separate entity, we probably get questioned a little bit more because we technically to them aren't providing a program or a service. We're not providing this like magical free service as like what Shriners is. So we're viewed a little differently, but that's just like an animal program such as, SPCA. Nobody says, oh, hey, what's your overhead, SPCA? I'm not going to adopt from you because you have an overhead. They just think it's so cool that the SPCA, is providing shelter and spaying and neutering for these animals, right? Which is fantastic. And that's what nonprofits are providing programs and resources in our communities,
Right.
whether that's conservation, whether that's health and human services, whether that's animals, they're providing usually these programs and resources at a lower cost, right? But there's still a cost to run these programs and services. And that's really what the overhead is for, to keep the lights on, to keep the employees and the volunteers and all the programs and services they are providing. Definitely.
Right. On to the next myth. United Way or Our Promise takes the entire fee and donation. Well,
yes,
obviously that's a myth.
We've heard this a time or two. We are not allowed to, nor do we want to. We are just the middleman or the middle arm that's providing a really good, resource and program for the state to be able for employees to have the choice and to have the opportunity to easily be able to give back to nonprofits, and we have, an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, a contract with the state of California, very specifically with the Department of General Services, to make sure that all of these things happen as a vendor, or, and that's all laid out in our contract with them is, what is our overhead? What are we providing as far as certification, that we are doing all of that vetting of those nonprofits. We worked really closely with the state controller's office every month to make sure that those deductions are happening with the employee's paycheck if they want a deduction. So we have very good partnerships with the state. And I really truly believe that's why we are still chosen every year to run this program, is because of our agreement with them, and that we try to keep a really low overhead, that majority is going back to the nonprofit, that we try to keep our costs low, and doing our due diligence as far as making sure that the nonprofits are paid out, in a very timely manner, and that they're being vetted, and that we're keeping state employees safe with their information and providing the safest possible way for them to be able to give back.
And Tabitha, I think you might have mentioned this in the beginning, but I just want to stress that it's not just an informal agreement. It is a formal agreement mandated by a state law.
It's in state statute. The government code is 14659. So if people like to go through government code and read we are in government code and state statute, and it's a formal agreement that we have with them to run this charitable campaign for the state of California.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Our third and final fact: nonprofits don't benefit from Our Promise. And I think we've definitely answered this question throughout what we've been saying, but I want to just make sure that
I've never had a nonprofit be like, that's just not worth it. Like, I don't want to be part of that campaign. I've never had a nonprofit say that. From everyone from the really small, tiny nonprofits to maybe some of the larger, franchises of nonprofits, the larger names, they've said, Tabitha, without the Our Promise campaign, we wouldn't have, the visualization and the marketing arm to be in front of such a massive audience. For example, a really tiny nonprofit is not able to go into every single state department and necessarily fundraise in front of all of these state employees. So being on our list and being on our website or being in our booklet is free advertising for them. They were like, we wouldn't have been able to get those donations or be able to gain new donors without that exposure. So, and that's really where I think that, there may be some, just not knowing or assuming incorrectly that, it's a big deal for nonprofits to be able to get in front of such a large audience. State employee audience is, I always call it, it's a beast. It's a beast of a workforce. There are so many of them, and this is a really easy way for nonprofits to be like, okay, great, I can be on your list, and they can choose my name, my nonprofit out of all of the other ones. Like, that's really cool that I am one of the many options that state employees can do. And that's really why nonprofits, I think, return every year to apply to be part of our list, because they know that they have the option to maybe do agency fairs. Those are kind of few and far between right now due to the environment, but It gives them an opportunity to get in front of state employees. Social media, I mean, we work with a lot of nonprofits. They tag us, we tag them. We're able to build a partnership and visualization online through social media and be able to, they're able to gain, new followers. They're able to gain new donors and things like that. The exposure alone on social media, the marketing aspect of, being able to talk about these nonprofits to state employees, whether that's in our different marketing materials or whether that's just us talking about them in general. So yeah, there's lots of avenues that are free, no cost to the nonprofit. And that's what's really always shocking. Like, oh, Tabitha, I don't have to, there's no fee for me to sign up to be on your list. No. Do we have a time cutoff? Yes, but there's no fee. You just have to apply within a certain time, which Ben will talk about at his session. But it's really it's an easy, free opportunity. There's no one who has ever said, oh, I wish I wouldn't have been on your list. Never heard that yet.
And then also this year, all of our Tuesday live sessions are only with our certified nonprofits.
Correct.
So again, that's another benefit to becoming a certified nonprofit.
Yeah, we like to say it's kind of like you get to be on the priority, you get to be on the high end of the totem pole. We still have like lots of state departments and agencies who maybe they will request other nonprofits, and of course we always are open to that. But usually, our certified list is always our first list that we go to and our first list that we check. But that's the great thing is that, there's so many options out there for nonprofits that state employees can choose from.
All right. So now it's time for our next fun part. We're doing our prize drawing, and it's not just one, but two people we're going to be pulling names from today.
Awesome. I can't wait. This is really exciting.
Okay.
See who the wheel spins.
All right, winner number one.
Katrina Beck from the military department. Yay!
And her favorite nonprofit is Team Teaching Everyone Animals Matter. Thank you for letting us know that.
Thanks, Katrina. Excited for you to be our first winner.
Okay, and the next winner, here we go. Looks like it's Wendy.
So Wendy Detmers from FOD Banning, and their favorite nonprofit is the Wildcat Sanctuary.
Awesome.
So thank you, Wendy.
All right, Wendy and Katrina, look out for an email from us. We will confirm your address so we can send you your prize pack. All right, so let me see here. Be sure to tune in with us next week. We'll have another session, of course, with My Sister's House, which is a nonprofit that supports women who are survivors of domestic violence. We'll be right there at My Sister's Cafe. And October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So please tune in and be sure to support whatever nonprofit you like through Our Promise. All right, Tabitha, any final words?
No, if you have any questions or, you're just more curious about what I talked about today, or you want to hear those numbers, I'm happy to share any. We're very transparent and, talking about our information. So please feel free to reach out to us. You can either see us on our website at ourpromiseca.org, or you can reach us directly via email, and that's ourpromiseca with the @ at uwccr.org, and we would be happy to answer any questions you have. So thank you so much. This was great.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Thanks. Bye.